I'll ask if there are any other residents who would like to be heard on matters that do not appear on the agenda. Mr. Tartaglione.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Councilman Moon. I'd like to pass these around. When I was here last week, Councilman Ball stated that he was supplied with a state law that supposedly superseded our city law. Is that a copy of part of the email that you were referring to him?
Don't remember the specific number of the code. I do think it was in the 500s. If you recall, I thought that it was a reference to our city code. Frank corrected me and he said that it was state code.
Right.
It appears that you've drawn something from state code, and this is the current code?
Yeah, Mr. Colrose referred me to the building inspector, and I asked yourself, Mr. Colrose, for a copy of this code. And it was supplied to me this afternoon about 4 o'clock by Vinnie Tambureau. And the circle around 502 was penned by Mr. Tambureau, and that's what he was referring to. What he was referring to is where it says exceptions, owner-occupied one-family dwellings. You see that in?
Yeah.
Well, I don't see in here where it says that you can collect water from a roof and pipe it into your house. In contrary to that, I see at 505.1 in the general water systems, where it says every sink, lavatory, bathtub, and shower, drinking fountain, water closet, or other plumbing fixtures shall be properly connected to either a public water system or an approved private water system. This code mirrors the city code and the county code. Now, you told me, and Mr. Colrose told me, that this states that you can collect water from the roof and pump it into a house as they do on Hen Island. Can you show me where it says that?
Well, I don't think anyone said that. I think there's a difference between what was allowed versus what is required. And I think what Frank elucidated on was that it was not required that there be water delivery to your home. That was the conversation as I recall it. None of us were reading from the state code at the time.
Well, where does it say that you don't need water?
One thing I can say is,
May I have a conversation with Mr. Bull?
actually, you're having a conversation with everybody.
No, I'm having a conversation with Mr. Bull.
Well, actually,
Our dialogue was between me and him.
And Steve, please, 1 second, but I'm always loath to read anything that's in a code without a definition section, because right here, dwelling unit, I don't know what that means. I don't know if that has any seasonal implication. I don't know if that is a full year thing. Those things matter, and a lot of the nuances here, and I also would love to know what the definition of an approved private water system would be. Perhaps my guess would be that would simply be a well, but I don't know. And in the absence of definitions,
Let
it's
me
difficult
read this
to.
letter to you from the Westchester County Health Department
Okay.
that was sent to me on July 7th. I'm just going to read you a portion of it, because there's a lot of stuff in it where the health commissioner goes off on a tangent into stuff that I don't believe is accurate either. But it says, this is in response to your letter dated June 24th, 09. It is agreed that cistern water is unacceptable as potable water supply source. Presently, there is no potable water supply source on Hen Island. So this is the health commissioner that's stating this to me, that the water on Hen Island is not potable and it's not acceptable. Here's the state code that says that every sink, lavatory, building, and shower, drinking fountain, water closet, or other plumbing fixture shall be properly connected to either a public water system or to an approved private water system. It doesn't talk about dwellings, it says water systems. It doesn't say summer dwellings, seasonal dwellings. I mean, if I build a house in...
Does it say something about the potability of the water in this code that you've given us? Because I don't see that. Just as water system, there's no implication as to whether or not it should be drinkable.
Approved private water system.
Potable means that it can be can drink
Potable
it
for consumption.
Yes.
for consumption. It has nothing to do with the shower or anything else. The shower doesn't have to be drinking water,
You know,
does it?
can I
It has
just,
to be approved. It has to be
But it
approved.
doesn't have to be potable.
Yes, it does. It
No.
has to be approved, an approved water system. An approved water system is tested by the health department on a regular basis.
But it doesn't mean, an approved water system doesn't necessarily deliver potable water, does it?
It does,
oh,
yes.
can I bring
Well,
us,
then, we,
can-
that this is a definition.
can I
thing
bring us
again,
back
which we
from-
seem to be missing.
well, this is no way to read a statute or a code provision, and so my suggestion is this. If you'd like to provide I'm not sure what your point is, and I'm not sure, we have 2 pages of something here, I'm not sure of the full context. If you want to provide a short cover memo of this and tell us what you think it means, and we'll have our building inspector and our legal staff look at your question and give you a written answer as to whether or not the interpretation that you'll put in that cover memo fits with their understanding of the state building code or not. And so that's, I think, the best way to dispense it with it. To go through lines taken out of a binder of a state code and start trying to interpret it when we don't have the definition section, it nears some sort of Twilight Zone experience for which I thought I would, when you got out of law school, you didn't have to do that in class anymore. I don't think we should do it here, but give us a memo that explains what your point is, because I'm not sure I understand it. To cover this, it could be a 2-sentence question or whatever, and we will look at it, we will vet it, and get you a response.
Mr. Koros stated to me last week that the state code superseded the city code. Is that correct, Mr. Koros?
I believe that to be true. I'm not an attorney.
But that's the statement that you made, so I assume that you consulted the attorneys, correct?
I consulted the building inspector.
I'd like to read to you another letter that came from the Westchester County Health Commissioner on June 17th, and it was directed to the Board of Directors on Hen Island. And it was carbon copied, it was CC'd to the building inspector in the city of Rye. It says, please be advised that the potential safety issue at cottage number 18 has been brought to my attention. There's an open pit by the edge of the abandoned cottage. In addition, the vacant building in disrepair and its debris may pose a fire hazard. Since building safety is a building department issue, Rye's building inspector is copied on this letter. That open pit that he was referring to was a sewage pit. Obviously, the Hen Island Board of Directors received this letter and they did something about it. They put an 1/8-inch piece of tin on top of it that when I was out there last week, it blew away. These are one of the sewage pits that you see the firemen and emergency services trying to get kids out of when they fall into them. It was a sewage pit for this abandoned cottage. This cottage that's been there for over 15 years that hasn't been used, that was issued violations by the city of Rye, and it's still in the same condition. Here we are in October, and the violation was written in April. I'm not asking you to address that issue, I just want to make you aware of it.
What was the date of the letter, Ray?
The date of this letter was June 17th. It was from Commissioner Myerson to the Board of Directors on Hen Island, and it was CC'd to Vincent Tamburo. I received it from the Building Department file.
You know, I think what we'd be happy to do with that is, we'll obviously have the building inspector and staff look at it, but the logical thing, if it's still a live violation, is to raise the issue as we have in the past with the attorney for the association. And in the past, they have been cooperative about remedying things that the building inspectors brought to their attention.
Well, they really haven't been cooperative, Mr. Mayor. They say they've been cooperative. They've been cooperative on some issues. They did cover one of the sewage pits from, not far from my.
Rather than hear that again, we're going to do that in this case, is to bring that to the attention of the building inspector first, and then we'll bring it to the attention of their attorney, and if that is appropriate. Be happy to do it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other residents that would like to be heard on matters that do not appear on the agenda? Sir, welcome.
City Council, Mayor, my name is Michael Clay Johnson. I own a campsite out in Hen Island, and my sister and I own a condominium in Water's Edge in Rye. I've looked at some building codes. I was here several weeks ago when the matter was addressed. I didn't make copies for anybody, but I'll read you what I have found. Mr. Tartaglione was speaking about a Rye City Code 108-25 regarding potable water from an approved source shall be available, et cetera, et cetera. Under the City of Rye Codes, building codes, which is section 108, there is a code 108-4 regarding non-applicability, which reads, this chapter, the building code chapter, shall not apply to mobile homes, mobile home courts, or to transient type occupancies and uses, including but not limited to nursing and convalescent homes, hotels, motels, tourist camps, farm labor camps, travel trailers and trailer parks, and other forms of temporary housing. I suspect the cottages out on Hen Island would be considered temporary housing. They're not habitable year-round. There is a New York State code under the building code that reads, the building code of New York State defines the term dwelling unit as a single unit providing complete, independent living facilities for one or more persons, including permanent provisions for living, sleeping, eating, cooking, and sanitation. I don't believe that any of the cottages on Hen Island fall under that category. It further goes on to say that it defines, it says that there are hunting and fishing cabins in New York State that are designed for occasional use. Pressurized water systems for potable water, solar panels or propane gas electric systems, gray water systems, chemical toilets, sanitary pit privies, residential on-site wastewater treatment systems are permitted. So, I don't know if I'm reading what I want to read, or if I'm seeing things that aren't there, but the folks out on Hen Island have been collecting rainwater off their roofs for years and years and years, as long as the campsites have been there. It's not that they're drinking the rainwater, as Mr. Tartaglione would lead you to believe. I've seen one of his broadcasts recently. It was taken from what looks like a commercial for Take Back the City of Rye, wherein he states that people on Hen Island are brushing their teeth with bird feces infected water. Now,
Let me see your teeth.
I don't know anybody who's doing that. The county was out there. They've been out there several times. They provided each campsite owner with a sign that says, do not drink the tap water, because the water from the roof comes through the tap. People have posted those signs at their sink for guests, family members who don't know that they shouldn't be brushing their teeth with the tap water. The folks who gather the rainwater from the roofs of their cottages treat that rainwater. They treat it with chlorine, with shock, with various chemicals, so that he can use it to wash dishes perhaps, not to drink. Come by the marina sometime and see the Hen Islanders hauling bottled water out to Hen Island. That's what they drink out there, bottled water. So to think that the folks out there are drinking water from their roofs is simply silly. I questioned Mr. Tartaglione on his website regarding why he purchased the cottage out there if he knew what the conditions were. He said, I'll quote from his website, just bear with me for a moment. I mentioned a New York Times interview that he gave in 2001. I'll read a little bit of that to you in a moment if you'll allow me.
Mr. Johnson?
Yeah.
One thing, I think that we'll hear a little of this, but I think we need to move on. And one thing I would like to have is where you read provisions of different sections of law, if you could give copies of those to the city manager, just so that they know what you were referring to or whatever. But I think in terms of why anyone bought their property or whatever, if you could sum that up or whatever, and we have an agenda to get
Sure.
to tonight, appreciate
Sure.
that.
He claims that during the time he purchased his cottage, he was led to believe, this interview was given in 2001, he was led to believe by the board of directors that the water and sewage systems on Hen Island were compliant. The fact of the matter is, in the New York Times article, the interview, he states to the interviewer that he was the president, and he was, at the time he gave that interview. So it's my contention he had full knowledge of what the situation was at Hen Island. I thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Johnson, appreciate you coming. Are there any other residents who'd like to be heard on matters? Ray, I'm going to give you like 60 seconds because you had time before.
Thank you, sir.
And I really think the
Thank
back
you.
and forth
Thank you.
is not really necessary.
Mr. Johnson refers to Hen Island as campsites, and you've also done that, sir. These are not campsites, these are homes. My house has air conditioning, heating, refrigerator, microwave oven, stereo TV, flat screen TV. So they're not
There
temporary.
are a variety of kinds of situations there on different parcels, though.
They are, but they're not campsites. Campsites are for tenting purposes. Nobody tents out there, sir. They call them campsites because in 1952, when the island was purchased, they were campsites. They were tents. They're no longer tents. They're now houses that were built illegally with no permits.
Well, why don't you, 45 more seconds.
Permanent provisions. The permanent provisions they refer to in that code are stoves, refrigerators, sinks, things like that. Those are things that every house out there has. He also refers to hunting and fishing cabins in that code. These are not hunting and fishing cabins. These are summer residences. I use mine all year long. I'm out there in the winter if I get a nice weekend. Not all the houses on Hen Island are equipped to be used in the winter, but mine is, and there's probably a handful of others that are and do. He talks about when I was the president. Here's what happened when I was the president. And I just want to address it because he brought it up, and I'm going to be 30 seconds. I was the president, and what I did was I put together a team, the New York State Emergency Management Team, the Rye Police and Fire Department, the Westchester County Emergency Management Service. I brought all these services together to bring them on Hen Island to see what we could do to make this a safer and healthier community. And they made recommendations. And when the people on Hen Island found out that I did this, they were so frightened
that what was going to happen was these agencies were going to close the island down. And when I found out, when I was president, when I first became president, I believed these systems were working, and they were good, because that's what I was sold, the bill of goods that wasn't accurate. Later on, that situation changed, and when I started to expose them and I started to speak to them about it and they started to object, they decided to remove me from the board. That's why I was removed from the board, because I wanted to make Hen Island a safe and healthy community.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Are there any other residents that would like to be